I do feel as though for the Cloud9 versus GenG series, I've been saying this all tournament long. Normally, when people hype up GenG, LS, and BDD, I have to be the one who comes in to rain on the parade and be like, look, he's not the best player. Like, calm down. He's not as good as these other Korean. But I feel like there was slander on GenG this whole tournament, dude. Like, just because they're boring previously, not of this world's, but just because they're boring, people make out like they're trash. Like, I think people went too far with seeing like teams like G2 in the past beat them and we're like, oh, that's just, our best Western teams can beat GenG, and then GenG, what are they going to do? It's like, mate, BDD is still a very good player, and at this tournament, if anything, he's had like the world's buff, haven't he? Like, they look a lot better than some past iterations.
I mean, I tweeted this earlier, but right now, if BDD makes the finals, he is in contention for MVP of this entire tournament, no doubt. And one of the stats that I posted was really interesting. So BDD right now, let me pull up my tweet, but he is doing
29, I want to say.
Yeah, he's like 29% of his team's damage at the moment. So he's 29.4% of his team's damage share, right? Which is second place to Chovy among all mid laners at Worlds. But here's the kicker. He takes the third least amount of gold. So his gold share is only 22.4%. So his efficiency is extremely high. And you might say, okay, well, we need some raw numbers on these two. His damage per minute is also second only to Chovy at this event. He is not taking gold from the side lanes in the mid game. He is just simply doing more with less at this event. And a part of that is the champion pool that he's been playing. Like that would be
blessed him with this fucking champion pool. Like, it's like, it will be Syndra meta, BDD.
Yeah,
like, finally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The Zoe Syndra Azir certainly helps that, right? Because you are going to be dealing a lot of poke damage throughout the game, and you can do it with kind of lower gold. But this is a player that is super fascinating because, as we saw today, he can basically GenG can ban out a lot of mid lane picks, and then they're just better than you at the remaining picks. And I think that's, we talked about the rise of Syndra so far in this event. Syndra has always been a BDD champion, right? This Zoe, Syndra, Azir, these are signature picks from BDD. And so when we look at what's left after they kind of ban out perks and ban out the more traditional mid lane pool, it's playing right into their wheelhouse. So either you go blow for blow and try and ban out BDD's champ pool, which I would be very interested to see what he would play if you tried to take out those three picks in a game and they were the ones who were like banning TF. But it feels really good for GenG right now, and they are certainly delivering in a lot of ways. But BDD's been extremely impressive individually. Clid has also had very good synergy. Obviously, the weak point is Rascal or Burdal, whoever they decide to play in the top lane, has been shaky. But they are making it work, and most of it's based around BDD just being an insane playmaker on this roster. Don't give him Zoe, by the way. I think the biggest mistake is like you can't give this guy the Zoe, because as we saw in the third game, even when they're very far behind, Zoe's just a champion that can always get you back into the game when you land like one bubble paddle star. So dangerous.
I'm really curious to see what happens when he goes up against Scout, because Scout also traditionally a really strong Syndra player. So I feel like you do get rid of the Zoe, because that thing was disgusting. Holy God, how he managed to find Sven at that dragon, I don't even comprehend how he managed that. But yeah, the guy's disgusting, so we get rid of that. And then I'm curious to see, because JJ is also very strong on Lee Sin, right? Sure. So I feel like he can nearly take what Korea did well for both the Mad Lions and this series today against Cloud9 and just flip it against them. So I think it's going to be super interesting.
That's one thing I want to ask about, actually, is I from watching the LPL in the summer, I feel like JJ's got the world's buff as well, mate. Like, this guy didn't seem as good when he was just an LPL player.
Yeah, he definitely had, like, I think spring was a lot rougher for him, where he's kind of tossing back and forth between Junja, but he's steadily been climbing up. Like, I wouldn't say he's like top 3 junglers, but he's slowly but surely like getting better, improving. I think he's been working a lot better with Scout as well. And just his focus and understanding of how to play around mid lane into bot lane and objective control is really, really good. And I think that's what kind of EDG have been relying on, is, a certain extent, is like, hey, look, he's kind of like, I can work with mid to go and like look for a play bot. I can do it to set up. I can use the pressure that Scout has mid or bot side pressure to set up Dragon. I can coordinate well to go for Rift Heralds. It really does seem like he's been really good in those early stages, but he's also been stepping up then when you get towards later team fights, where there's been some fights where I'm like, I don't consider JJ to be like the best player with hands in the LPL, especially in the jungle role, right? But there's a couple times on Lee Sin plays where I'm like, that was really well done. Like there was one, I can't remember exactly what they're playing recently. I think it was at this tournament, and it was like he was on the Lee Sin, running away, could have used the Lee Sin kick to save himself, held it, and then managed to get like a 3-man knock up with the Lee Sin kick. And I was like, that was nuts. Like he's on like a 10th of his HP, and he's like, cool, I've got exactly enough to get in here. So he's actually been playing really, really smart. So yeah, I think he's been exceptional this tournament. And I'm hoping that he can continue to build up because he is a fairly new player. So the fact we're seeing him perform on an international stage is awesome.
You want to go into some of the games that happened today?
Do it.
Talk a little bit more in depth about the Cloud9 GenG matchup.
Did you actually? Listen, obviously, Monty, you've worked with Cloud9 in some capacity. Do you still actually work? Do you still do the nines with them?
Oh yeah, I do occasionally. I actually will be doing. I think I'll do an episode after, like in November. So after they get back from Worlds and everything, where we'll debrief.
We should have
a
talked
bunch
to
of
Blabber. He never comes on this fucking show, but nothing petty there at all. I mean, listen, like, I've flamed you for about 2 years. I do think you're mad overrated, so I don't blame you. Whatever, you don't have to accept the invitations. But here's the question, Monty: was there any hopium in you? Did you really think? Did you think this is possible?
Yeah, I predicted Cloud9 to win the series because traditionally. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about GenG, and it's why I will predict EDG against them as well. Cloud9, do they kind of run it in the early game sometimes? Yes. GenG has actually been much more active in the early game than they have been otherwise. The problem is GenG has been throwing in the mid and late game, and so any advantages that they were accruing in the early game would basically turn into barren 50-50s. And if I had to say, like, okay, I assume that many of these games are going to be somewhat even in the late game, basically I thought it was possible that Perks was going to be able to pull out, some clutch plays and maybe take this series overall. Because if you actually look at what we've seen from GenG, like, they've had the third highest gold differential at 15 minutes as a team. They're getting first turret over 80% of the time, first blood 75% of the time. They've been doing really, really well, but their game length, their average game time is like the longest of any team at this tournament. So they basically give openings. And I think that's going to be really dangerous against EDG. First off, because EDG is very conservative in the early game and they play very safe, and then they just play you for 5v5 team fights, and I will take that all day over GenG. So I thought there was a chance that Cloud9 could actually pull off an upset here if they were at their ceiling.
That leads to an obvious question, though, Monty, which is a very quick sidebar, because obviously relates to the LPL again. Monty, I watched the RNG vs EDG series the whole time, like, oh boy, I can't wait for some team fights. Like at the end, like, it's like 4 games passing 4 hours later. Like, anyone? Like, am I the only one who sat there like, what I've got on popcorn for? There never was a fucking 5v5 team fight until the end of the game.
But the thing is, GenG will create those scenarios. Like, there wasn't going to be one in the EDG one because you have an Annie with Predator running all around the map trying to start skirmishes. Like, GenG's just not going to do that. Like, GenG, they literally flipped Baron in game 1 completely unnecessarily. They gave up an advantage that they had to a stupid mid lane fight where, Clid just walked on the tower for no reason and gave the opportunity for Cloud9 to come back into this game. They were almost losing objectives to like Ziggs ults from Sven. It was dodgy. Like, a couple more of those things go Cloud9's way, and we're looking at a Cloud9 win in game number 1. That was totally feasible for a while. So I just don't underestimate GenG's ability to throw, and I think that EDG's team fighting, like, they're getting what they want in GenG. Like, this is just a bad matchup for GenG, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. I will also say, like, game 3 today, you have a 4,000 gold lead and you've got like a Misfortune, a Syndra, and a Jarvan, and you're not trying to engage. I'm just like, why? You're at Dragon and they're like basically posturing right in front of you. I think it was 4th Dragon. If you just engage on that, you can 100% blow up GenG and Cloud9 can take that game. I was really surprised to see them play as scared as they did.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think GenG just makes a lot of just strange mid-game decisions around objectives. They don't push their advantage. They play scared a lot of the times in scenarios where they can really push advantages. And you just can't do that against some of these teams like Dom1 and EDG that are so good at contesting, even with disadvantages.
I even feel like they
out.
didn't even always use the actual tools in the fucking game to end the game. Like, there's times they could have like done like a dive on the inhib towers and gone for a fight and just end the game. They're always the team that's like, no, back off. We'll get the next dragon as well. Like, I'll just go back to this now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Like, because that's the thing, you can get away with that when you're against like the messy Group D of like a bunch of good or Western teams. Maybe you can do that against them. Maybe you can do it against Cloud9. Like, I don't think you can do that against EDG, and God forbid Damwon. Like, you have to take your one chance to win the game when it's in one of those matches.
Yeah, and the thing about EDG as well is, like, if it was a different matchup, let's say EDG was playing T1, where T1 has been really strong in the early game, but they just completely stifle you and will just rotate like crazy to take objectives and push the advantage. I think EDG would have a lot harder time catching up in a game against T1, but I can easily see them, doesn't really matter if they fall behind, because eventually GenG is going to give them the window that they need to get back into it.
Yeah, my biggest worry is just that EDG still go for these like funky styles that we've seen. Like, I was already kind of hitting on the Enchanter supports, but the other one I was looking at was like the T1 game in groups, where we're like, oh yeah, EDG love the team fight. They're absolutely great at it. And then it was the Talon jungle, Jace Rise, Misfortune. You was like, that's not really a team or composition that's going to do very well against a Poppy, Kennen, Aphelios. And I was like, this is not really the team fighting style that we've seen from EDG. And there's like an awful lot of times this tournament where I've been like, this is a weird like pick to go into what the EDG kind of structure is. So my biggest worry is coming into the GenG game is that we see like, Mako goes back towards like Lulu, they take the Aphelios. You just end up having GenG, if they want to go aggressive early, diving bot side, like we saw like T1 do, Cloud9 do, RNG do it as well in their series. You're shutting down the bot side of EDG. And then if you get to that point, well, even if you play it slow as GenG, and you give an opportunity maybe for EDG to come back, like, do they actually have enough in the tank to come back? Or is GenG just that far ahead?
I also do think, by the way, like the whole Birdall Rascal thing, like, listen, I don't know how they managed to get this far with that whole situation going on, but it's clear. This is what's worrying if you're a GenG fan or an LCK fan. It's actually clear from the way they swapped to Birdall, to me, at one point in time. I don't think they were experimenting. I think they really thought, like, Rascal's gone to shit in scrims or something, and they were like, right, Birdall, it's you all the way. And then, obviously, he was doing mad shit, like flashing backwards and stuff, so it's like, right, fucking hell, bring back the other guy. But you see, like, that's obviously a massive problem. So even though, like, as I said on the last episode, like, obviously it is like a meme that Nelson really thinks Flandre is the best top laner. Like, no, from years ago he didn't, he's just friends with him now. No one really thinks Flandre is the best top laner. But tell you what, he's a mega experienced top laner. And on this team, he doesn't try to be the carry. Like, I could see him just totally neutralizing the top laner of GenG.
I think the problem is that you have what you've seen from GenG so far is that they have two very distinct champion pools. And so you kind of know what's coming depending on which top laner is going to be in. Birdall's going to be playing AD Bruisers. He's going to be playing the Camille, the Aurelia, and maybe the Graves. And you know that Rascal's going to be playing Renekton and Kennen and Graves. Those are the only champions they've played. They've only played 5 champs in the top lane. And that when you have Rascal and he runs out of things to pick, he's going to pick Renekton, which is not ideal at this event. You could also make an argument that he has been, because they are allowed to get very high priority top lane champions, like the Graves and like the Kennen. By the way, the Kennen now has a 72% win rate. It's 13-5 at Worlds. It's extremely strong. So he is actually getting boosted by the fact that he is getting 2 of the highest win rate top laners that are relatively easy/safe to play in lane. And if he doesn't get those picks, does he just go back to the Renekton? I don't think that's ideal against world-class top laners.
Also, didn't Flandre have like fucking Graves like every game in that series? So that's going to be contested, surely, right?
Yeah.
It's only Graves and Jace he's played at this World. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So that's why I was kind of laughing. It's like, Flandre kind of fits into that. But when we look back at like LPL,
I think the difference is that he actually does things with those champions.
Yes, true. Right, yeah. But yeah, he's also got like from LPL, right? He's got like the Nara that's in there. He can play Ken and he can play other stuff. So I'm not as worried for Flandre. But yeah, I think it's going to be really curious to see like what does EDG look like if we do end up seeing like Jason Graves taken away, because they're just super easy. Like, cool, I'm going to have full party top side. I'm going to be totally fine. If you come and gank me, I'll probably be all right and can get away. So you can end up then focusing as EDG elsewhere, or having that control of the wave sets you up nicely if you want to go for dives in the early stages. So I think it definitely opens up like question marks where it's like, okay, if we end up taking away, say, the Graves, we end up taking something like the Jace for our top side for Rajcula, but then what actually happens for Flandre? Like, what is he going to decide to go towards?
By the way, Monty, have you noticed as well that in the League of Legends meta, doesn't matter what role it's in, by the way, RIP the old Graves, the like fucking OG ADC champion. One of the best champions, actually, I thought at the time. Very simple, but really high skill manifestation. Obviously, whenever they change it, right, if it's ever viable, Monty, it just becomes OP as fuck. As a jungler, it was strong last Worlds, now as a top laner. Like, you know, the obvious scenario is Riot tries to have it in the meta, but then they try and fine tune it to make it not OP. But you know what the obvious answer is? Close, but no cigar.
Oh, there you go. So where's this going?
It's always going somewhere, mate. It's always going somewhere.
I love Riot logic that Graves can't have a cigar, but Gragas can literally just have a giant bottle, like barrel of alcohol that he drinks while slurring his words, as if that's more acceptable, even though both things are legal.
Graves can't have a cigar, but Seraphine on Twitter can be borderline suicidal. Like, what hierarchy of values have we got going on here? Like, what is this? What is this?
I think it's absolutely hilarious. I have no idea what prompted that decision. But yeah, I think the difference, like when you look at the champions that Flandre plays, is if Flandre, if he's not being banned out, he's delivering. He's dealing almost 30% of his team's damage. That's just not true of Rajcula. Like, Flandre has been a point of strength on those champions. And so if you are going to be focusing on banning out other players or restricting their play styles, Flandre just has the opportunity to play these champions that he's good on and delivering on over and over and over again. So there's no need to take that away. But Rajcula, I think Rajcula or Birdall are pretty concerning in this series overall. You didn't see good games there. I mean, basically, first thing that happened in game number 1 was Fudge just solo killing him. It wasn't a good look. So I think it's tough. I think this is a really tough matchup overall for GenG. I don't think player for player they match up particularly well. I don't think in terms of style that GenG is really able to counteract what EDG really likes to do and that they are legitimately world class at.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I kind of see for EDG where you can try and push them down, and why I was kind of talking about the Flandre thing is like, I feel like right now, the way that EDG played a lot in LPL was we get pressure mid, we're going to play down around bot side. And Viper and Mako play a hyper aggressive bot lane because they knew they had all this pressure coming down to the bot lane. Now we're seeing the swap up where it's like, okay, we're now using that pressure and going top side for Flandre. And because Flandre is on things like the Jace and the Graves, he has the wave control. It's super easy to set these up and they continue to go for it. So I think if you end up taking away that opportunity from EDG by removing the Graves, taking a Jace, not giving that same control to the wave, EDG, I think they're going to struggle a little bit more to set that up. And then you can actually try and punish bot side because we're still seeing Viper and Mako play very aggressive in lane. And teams have been able to punish that really well. So I think that's the only way that I could try and see GenG make something happen against EDG. But that's not the way GenG have been playing, right? So that's kind of where I think it's still a case of, I think EDG win this and pretty comfortably. But I think that's something that we'll probably see later on in the tournament where EDG, if they do go to finals, will probably end up getting exploited like that.
Look, I think the finals are just going to be terrible. So I think unfortunately, whoever wins that T1 Dom1 Kia match is absolutely just going to shit stomp whoever shows up in the finals because, you know, both Dom1 and T1 look like the best teams at this tournament. It's very hard to find, like, it's easier, I think, to find flaws in T1's play, but I'm not actually sure what they're capable of when they're forced off the style that they're playing right now because no one's been able to make them play anything differently. So I don't even know that they're not good at other things. Like, they've been able to hide quite a bit, even coming into this semifinal match, because they're doing they're doing something very different than the rest of the teams at this tournament. And it's been really effective for them. And they haven't had to change and do anything else. So I do have questions about that, but other than that, like Dom1 both of these teams have such strong early games right now and are able to snowball so efficiently that it seems like they can go blow for blow against GenG in the early game and then win late, or they can just win early against EDG and just completely choke them out. So it's hard to see how either of those teams, barring some insane level up during the semifinals, are going to be able to come back and do much.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I will say is like for EDG, I think they're incredibly good at prepping. Now, obviously, as you say, you haven't seen a huge amount from Damwon, a little bit harder prep, but I still think they'll end up coming in with a game plan that surprises a lot of people if they are the ones that make it to finals. And I think we've seen them against teams that have crazy hyper aggressive early games, right? Like it's the LPL. We have teams like FPX, teams that want to like try and throw you off. And I think when we're looking at the way that Damwon have been able to find victories is strong mid jungle 2v2. Do I think Scout and JJ are as strong as Showmaker and Canyon? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I think they can match up reasonably well on the correct picks. I think Khan as well has been just kind of pub stomping the top laners at the tournament. It hasn't really been a big issue because I don't think there's great top lane talent. I don't see Flandre just kind of folding under the same sort of pressure.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of what we've seen from Damwon is, hey, we get like the Lee Sin Syndra, right, that we saw for against Mad Lions. It's like, cool, we win mid lane, and because of that con, you are free to do whatever the hell you want top lane. You know there's going to be absolutely no pressure going your direction. I think if you can actually shut down that mid jungle pressure, which I think with EDG come in with a game plan they can do, you then can exploit Con in the top lane, because I still think he's going to play aggressive regardless of if there's pressure mid or not. It's kind of what we saw at MSI, at least coming into MSI. It didn't really get exploited too much, but I still think you can. And even if you don't, EDG's strongest plays throughout LPL has been, let's move Scout to bot lane. Like, let's just all in on this bot side. I think if you end up with that position again, Ghost and Barrel have been the weak point for Damwon, and if you can exploit that, well, then there's also ways. So I'm not as convinced that it's just going to be a complete swipe. I still, as I said before, I think Damwon more so are favored coming in against EDG, but I don't think EDG are completely out of it. I still see a world where EDG could take it, even if it is a very much a smaller margin than I give to Damwon.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The two factors I think are there. Like, one, they're the only team in the tournament, realistically, that actually has the chance to force spot. Like, the others just didn't look like they even attempted to. And then secondly, the Flandre argument, I think, is a good one, because I'll update the player-hater storyline for Khan, Monty. I have to always, at all times, I'd say I'm Doctor Strange, but I just only go and find the futures in which Khan fails and come back and tell you how it happens. So here's how like, already it would have been funny for him to lose to Armut playing Wukong. That already would have been hilarious, as it is. Because remember, it's his last tournament, so he has to ride off into the sunset no matter what, right? So this is the new funniest way that his career can end. He makes the world's final, Monty. He's never chalked in a final before. He gets to the world's final, and then he actually loses to Flandre over 3 years out of his prime. Like, that would be the most hilarious, after shit stopping the whole tournament. Like, that would be the most Khan way to ever end your career. Exactly. That's what I'm waiting for.
You like the movies where the cop dies one day before retirement instead of the one where the hero rides off into the sunset after killing the bandits.
Dude, my favorite movie is Heat. What do you think? I don't watch it and go, oh, it's a shame we didn't just get away and live in, I don't know, I think it was New Zealand's right. Shame we didn't go to New Zealand. And I'm also like, no, that's shit. You want it to end that way. It's like heroic and it's tragic. The tragedy of the man. Also, I just don't want to listen, I already know what's going to happen, Monty. The problem is, if they win Worlds, right, people are going to say Khan was better than Nagori. Already I'm fucking mild in thinking about it. And then B, they're all going to go, just like Marin style, they're going to go, maybe he was the greatest top laner ever, Monty. And then the worst thing is, because he'll never play again, it's like if Michael Jordan had retired after he just hit that game winner against the fucking Jazz. It would be even worse now. Like, you'd never be able to ever have anyone else as the contender for GOAT. Like, they will just ride that narrative to the end of time. Because if you don't play again and lose, in a way, you just always leave at that high point, don't you? And fans will always sort of exaggerate how good you were in a way.
The fact that people legitimately believe that Marin is in the best top laner ever conversation is fucking insane to me.
All I'm going to say is 2 years later, they were like, right, we can basically take almost anyone. Who need? Yeah, fuck it. And then they still made it to the world's finals. Like, mate, you know, there's more at work there, I'm saying, boys, than just the top lane. That's all I'm saying.
Like, I just can't even believe, like, under any metric, what are you convinced that Marin was super good at? Like, he basically had like one good year, and he didn't even have the 1 year peak. That was the Shy had the 1 year peak. Like, he didn't peak higher. He didn't have any consistency. He was on garbage teams, not being a very mediocre player a lot of the time. His champion pool wasn't amazing. People remember him being very good because he was like 23-0 on Maokai at one point in time. And he would just get the thing about being on a team with Faker is Faker absorbs all the fucking bans. So you just get to play Maokai every game.
By the way, if you're in contention for GOAT top laner and people go signature champion and you go Maokai, sir, like you're instantly disqualified. What are you talking about? That would be like if the mid laner was like, I might be the best mid laner ever. Best champion Malzahar, actually, sort of mained it. Kind of mastered it, really. And yeah, you mastered not playing mid lane, motherfucker. That's what you did. Like, that's like the GOAT jungler. No, of course. Playing a lot of that nowadays. Yeah, these are champions. Yumi would fucking matter. Be like, oh, that's the way I mastered Yumi in many ways. No one could really do what I did. Like, give me a break. Certain champions disqualify you instantly. Maokai is one of them. I've said it now. Unless you're the coach, Maokai, in which case you might be on EDG, you might win Worlds. There we go. Tied it back in, brought it all back around. There you go. That's the only legitimate way to be a champion on Maokai. There you go.
There it is. There it is. I do want to talk about T1 though, because I think the upcoming matchup is really interesting, and I think that T1 has been playing the game so differently than every other team at this event, and they have looked equally dominant, basically playing a different meta than most other teams. Like, great. Dom 1 Kia, excellent.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.